It's International Women's Day this week, which is a great time to reflect on the triumphs achieved and challenges faced by women and girls the world over. Now, ancient Egypt wasn't really an egalitarian society in many respects. Everyone was, depending upon the era and your definition of ownership, owned by the pharaoh. Though that's not the same thing as being considered non-persons or not having rights, and it certainly isn't the same thing as everyone being equal under the king. There was a hereditary nobility, there were multiple tiers of society, and slavery in numerous forms. But one of the places we find surprising levels of parity is between the sexes. Not actual equality, ancient Egypt being very, very patriarchal, but the sort of equality-ish, where we all have to pretend equality is a relative concept, where 1 is more or less equal to 2, when you take 50 into account. A couple of sentences ago I typed sexes rather than genders, and then switched it up a few times before settling on one. I'm not in a position to talk about ancient Egyptian concepts of gender, but I would like to take a moment to offer solidarity to everyone around the world for whom gender is an increasingly contentious issue, and who have to defend their gender identity, whether or not it was the one assigned to them at birth, from people whose business it is none of. My fellow armchair Egyptologists, there are close to 8,000 million humans living presently. There's room for people to not fit into 2 sexes and 2 genders, and for people not to have their genders defined at birth and never be re-evaluated. There is no equality or justice possible until we acknowledge that. You are welcome to disagree with me, and incidentally, scientific consensus, but please do it somewhere else. I've mentioned women's rights in ancient Egypt before. In my 9 Factlets video from ages ago, I mentioned that there was a surprising amount of gender equality in ancient Egypt. It's sad that we should be surprised by gender parity in any society, but there we go. I think it's even sadder somehow to equate gender equality with women who held senior positions in society. That's tokenism. Look, Britain has had several queens who were sovereign in their own right, but rarely did this mean much for an increase in the rights and freedoms of women in general. Likewise, it's all very well that Cleopatra was a girl boss, but her advisors and generals and highest-ranking priests were in the vast majority men. So although Egypt had some remarkable female kings, not all of them a result of extraordinary times and collapsing dynasties, by the way, today I want to focus on what I think feminism is really meant to be about. Everyday women who by right should have lives exactly as meaningful or otherwise as anyone else around them. So, to celebrate International Women's Day, I thought I'd take a look at some of the things women were doing in ancient Egypt. I can't believe I made a video about ancient Egyptian inventions and I never mentioned girl bands. But one of the vocations accessible to women was that of the professional, often itinerant, musician. And this was a career that seems to have welcomed women from all walks of life, particularly the nobility who could outsource their childcare and more mundane daily chores. Musicians and presumably dancers were very useful to have around in case of festivals, funerals and the like. Ancient Egypt had female physicians. I suspect that for the most part they were confined to matters of gynecology and obstetrics, which is handy, since men seem to have been forbidden from being midwives on the basis that in some eras the midwife was effectively a vessel for one of the maternal goddesses, Hathor, Isis or Nephthys. I covered in a previous video that the ancient Egyptians were likely the first society to use standardized medical texts, and there's some evidence that this applied to gynecology as much as to anything else. One purported physician was Peseshet, who lived during the 4th dynasty and in fact held the post of overseer of female doctors, and may even have run a technical school of midwifery. Women in ancient Egypt were often business owners, and ran their agricultural estates. This, like a lot of ways ancient Egyptian society utilised women, was not owing to an enlightened view of female capabilities, but because the higher up in society you got, the more a woman was expected to work in the home, particularly if she was a wife and or mother. Like the gynecologists, who became so because men couldn't be midwives, and the girl bands, who formed probably as the men were required labouring and fighting, female business owners were a necessity of a strongly gender-divided society. As has often been the case in other societies, lower socioeconomic status can erode gender boundaries to an extent. Among the labouring classes, anyone anyone of working age was expected to labour according to their physical capacity to do so, with no strong division between the sexes, though I suspect there weren't too many women fighting in Egypt's armies. Anyway, there, I've used gender and sex interchangeably. Now nobody's happy. Thanks for watching, and happy International Women's Day. Well, not necessarily happy, but however you spend it, I hope you spend it well. As always, if you feel inclined to like, comment and subscribe, it would be a great help to my growing channel. Those of you who do so regularly are channel heroes, and though I'll never know who you all are, I do notice everything you do to help me out, and I'm so grateful. The absolute icons who gaslight and gatekeep their way into my heart are my backers at patreon.com/armchairegypt. Thank you all for your continued support, and please don't cancel your membership because I just fell short of calling you girl bosses. Until next time, my fellow armchair Egyptologists, life, prosperity and health to you all. Thanks for watching. Head over to my channel for more, or click here to see what the YouTube demons think you should watch next. I hope you'll consider subscribing. If you'd like to support and collaborate on the channel with me, go to patreon.com/armchairegypt. You can also join my Discord community, there's an invite link in the description.